Pausing at the portal before entering a new phase of our soul work. This is Rose Diamond. What does it mean to be part of a leading wave of consciousness evolving on the planet? Can you feel the truth in that? Is that your experience? If it is, you'll know that this is a really big journey that we're on. And for me, it's the most exciting and challenging adventure there is. It means that you are a pioneer, an explorer, someone who has chosen to step into new territory, into virgin territory, somewhere where nobody else has ever stepped before. Always stepping into the unknown, always discovering. And certainly there have been those before us who have walked the spiritual path, who have awakened and become enlightened. There have been enlightened masters. There have been many people throughout history who have led quiet, unassuming lives and yet been in a state of enlightenment. But this is the first time in human history that so many of us have been free to choose this journey. And even though life on the planet Earth may appear to be very dark and destructive at this time, this darkness is giving birth to a new light. That's the trust that we are in. As more and more of us become stabilized in this new stage of consciousness that I call whole mind, whole world, everything will change for the better. In fact, this new stage of consciousness is the only thing that can change things for the better. Consciousness plus action. Action without the consciousness is not going to get us anywhere. Consciousness without action, not going to get us anywhere. If we really want to bring in change and transformation into our culture on Earth and into our relationships with all other beings on our planet, then we need to raise our consciousness and to combine that with conscious action. So if you're here listening to me now, you're part of this wave, this next stage of evolution. And even though we've been moving forward together for years, decades even, as droplets in a wave of evolving consciousness, I'm sure, like me, you've often felt very alone on this journey. Alone, confused, not really understanding what you've got yourself into. You've been moving forward in trust, one step at a time, gaining understanding as you go. And you've been moving into and through layer after layer of deep healing until the healing has felt endless. Many of us are in what Matt Kahn has called the first wave of ascension. I call this the leading edge of consciousness. And we've chosen as part of our soul work to be here as healers. And we've had the opportunity over the last 10 years as healers to clear a lot of old limited conditioning from our own being. And in clearing those old patterns from our own being, we've opened up the opportunity for new patterns to emerge in humanity at large. So we're laying the tracks for a whole new way of being in the world through doing this healing process. And much of that time it's felt, when I'm in a healing process, it feels intensely personal. It feels like this is about me. Although there's always a part of me these days that knows that it's about more than me. In a way, in order to be able to transmute that energy, I have to take it on as being mine. But in taking it on and transmuting it, I and you, if you're doing the same kind of work, are also doing this for everybody else, for the collective consciousness. It's the work we've taken on at a soul level. And for me personally, that's work that I've been doing my whole life. But in the last 3 or 4 years, it's become very intense. And many of us have gone beyond personal healing into intergenerational healing and ancestral healing. I think that's why some of us have been moved around the planet so that we be in a place where we can do that deep ancestral healing. And there's a lot more I could say about this deep healing process, but I'll save that for another time. And even if you don't identify as being a healer, you may identify as being someone who's sensitive, empathic, compassionate. You care a lot. You care deeply for humanity, for other species, for the planet. for the suffering that's arising all over our planet. And you may feel in some way that you've been carrying that suffering. You've been carrying it on your shoulders, and in some ways you have. At the same time, like me, you've probably over the last years been connecting more and more frequently with what I call the state of wholeness, with that inner sense of peace, contentment, fulfillment, enoughness, that everything I need is right here now within me, that I don't need anything else. And then that state of wholeness then radiates out and attracts to me everything else that I might need. And I've been over the last year I've been practicing myself and then leading others in the practice of choosing wholeness, consciously choosing to put our attention on wholeness, even when those suffering states are arising. And like me, in this time, you may have been swinging uncomfortably between those more expanded states of wholeness and expansion and joy and light and meaning and purpose, and then back into the contraction of the suffering and the pain and the healing, and then into the expansion, then into the contraction. That's the breathing process, that's the birthing process, expansion, contraction, expansion, contraction. But maybe, like me, you've also been wondering recently, will this ever end? Am I never going to get to the bottom of my own healing process? Layer upon layer it keeps falling away, it keeps being peeled away, and yet there's still more. Will it ever end? How will it end? Am I making any difference? So, this sense of it going on, this healing process going on and going on, can give rise to a process of self-doubt and self-questioning. And often in these last few years, I felt that I've been in a birth canal, that there's been nothing that I could do to forward my own liberation from the birth canal, that I've had to kind of wait on this organic process, even though at the same time I've been doing conscious practices. It's a feeling of kind of like being stuck in that birth canal, being stuck in that darkness, not being able to see the light that's coming, and just having to really surrender to that. So if you can relate to any of what I've just said, you may also relate to the feeling of relief I had when a week ago I listened to Matt Kahn's broadcast about the next 10 years of evolution. And he talked about the last 10 years as having been a corridor of clarity. That those of us, particularly, as I say, those of us who are sensitive, empathic souls, have been doing this healing work, particularly probably for decades actually, but particularly in the last 10 years, more and more intensively, as our contribution to clearing the way for the way forward for humanity to take its next steps. And Matt Kahn calls that the corridor of clarity. And he is saying that corridor, if we choose, and we have to choose, is now over, that we can step out of that corridor and into the next corridor, which he calls the corridor of resolution. And this is going to be a very different experience. So in other words, we don't have to keep going back and deep down and in to heal, to sort of free up the wellspring within. We can choose to become embodied, to embody the light, to embody the joy, to embody the wholeness, and to act from there. So this is more a period that we're moving into activity, expansion, creativity, lightness. So as droplets in this new wave of consciousness, of whole mind, whole world, that's unfolding now at the edge of evolution, you and I, there's incredible freedom in this, privilege. There's also huge responsibility, that the freedom and privilege and the responsibility, to my mind, go hand in hand with each other. What does it mean to be responsible to live from this place of being at the leading edge of consciousness? What does it mean to have this opportunity now to become embodied carriers of that, of whole mind, whole world, of that sense of that knowing, that inner knowing of interconnectedness, moving from this is about me to actually no, this is about us, this is about the whole. We're here for the whole. So in this 3-session discovery process that I'm offering, standing at the portal and choosing to pause before we move through into our next stage of soul work, what I'm offering is an opportunity to explore together in just 3 sessions what all of this means to us, so that we can become really clear about the choices we want to make moving forward, and so that we're not carrying any baggage with us that we can leave behind. So if this resonates with you, I would love to see you in this first group. Have a few places left. Please join me. Thank you.